I've been a cop in Saskatoon for 17 years. The vast majority of my career is sort of having something to do with the drugs and organized crime section. I started handling informants, patrolling the core neighborhoods in Saskatoon, buying drugs off the street, kicking in the doors of drug houses when I was in our gang unit. The most violent crime that's going on in our city. It all seems to tie back to the way we're dealing with drugs.
What's going on, everybody? That was tonight's guest, Matt Ingrouille. My name is Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knocks Talks, coming at you from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Treaty Number 6 territory, and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. Let's bring in Matt. Well, hey there, buddy.
Camera one. Hey,
Yes.
Dan, how are you?
Yeah, I like how you were like.
Yeah, I was thinking camera one, camera two.
Yeah, don't. I forgot to tell you. Don't look at the second camera. Forget it's there. Forget it's there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
It's gone. It's gone
Yeah.
from my mind.
All gone. So thanks so much for joining us tonight. I know that you're a busy guy, so I appreciate it very much. Is there anything that you'd like to say before we get started tonight?
Just, you know what, Dan, thanks a lot for having me. For those of you that don't know, I had a podcast for a little while a few years ago. I had to shut it down for some family emergencies, and I waited. There was a big guilt in my heart when I had to let it go, because I knew that the community needed somebody, sharing these types of stories. And Dan, when you popped up, I have to say that was a weight off my back, and you were giving the community and people something they need. So big thanks to what you're doing here, man.
Thank you so much, man, and I appreciate you saying that. And I truly love what I do, and I am very much at home in this community and this studio that's coming up around me. So it's in good hands, man. Like, I'm doing my best here. Donna and I, we're just out here like a couple of cowboys. All right. Well, I guess without further ado, let's hit it.
This is Hard Knocks Talks.
Okay, before we dive in, I just want to let our viewers and listeners know that tonight's live production is title sponsored by Prairie Harm Reduction. Improving quality of life for everyone starts at the local level. Prairie Harm Reduction upholds gold standards of harm reduction that are recognized nationally. Every day, they prove harm reduction works. To learn more and make a donation to their safe consumption site, check out www.prairiehr.ca. Giant shout out to them.
Huge shout out to them.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. Like, just before we jump in, let's talk just for a sec about Prairie Harm Reduction. It seems like the public at large only recognizes them as the safe consumption site. Like, that's the big shiny thing that everyone has heard about, right? They have 120 employees. Like, they're doing so much more than their safe consumption site. It's incredible, man. Like, helping people get housed, helping people access services. It's incredible. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Youth homes they just opened up.
Mhm.
Yeah, lots going on with that organization. The safe consumption site's really the smallest part of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to point out their intense family outreach as well. They helped
Mhm.
me like beyond explanation early in my recovery journey. So always a place in my heart for those guys.
Oh, that's great to hear, Donna. I'm on the board of PHR and have been for a few years, and it's awesome, an awesome place to contribute some time.
When did you start to realize that there was a need for this advocacy?
Yeah, that sort of happened like sort of closer to the end of my career in the drug unit in the organized crime section. There was like I made a lot of sacrifices when I was there. We were integrated with the RCMP, which gave us national coverage. We did things a lot differently then as far as enforcement and a lot of times it was you not only take down your targets here, but you have to try to find out who their back end is and you take them down as well. So I traveled quite a bit, put a lot of hours in, a lot of complex investigations and unique techniques that gave me an incredible skill set that I carry forward today. But you couldn't help but think, well, wait a sec, there's more. Like I was there, I got to experience like the meth crisis from before it started to it being full blown. I got to experience the fentanyl crisis from before it even existed in Saskatoon to I probably held some of the first pills in my hand that even got here through an informant of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like you look back and you're like, what the like we did all that, and like, what was it like? The drugs got more dangerous, while I was working my bag off here, and the my colleagues and I are doing some pretty risky stuff sometimes, and it's just like, for what? Like, it's not working. We've created one of my presentations I often give is sort of breaking down the drug trade and treating it as if it's an economy. Like, forget that it's illegal. Let's just look at it as the economy of the drug trade. And it's like the most successful and most valuable, profitable system or commodity that's completely unregulated. And
so here's
like,
a question. Here's a question. So we're talking about
Yeah, man.
the drug economy here in Saskatchewan. Now, is the justice system hindering it in any way at all?
Hindering the drug economy?
Yes.
Like, do you mean by like arresting people? With
Yeah, like
personal amounts, or like,
arresting
could you narrow
people and doing seizures and
Oh
things
yeah.
like that. Like, is it putting a dent in this economy or no?
Oh no, it's allowing that economy to thrive. Like, if you put the brightest minds in the room and said, I want you to come up with a system that would make drugs more profitable, I don't think you could create a better system than this. And all of that money is going into organized crime. Well, just in, yeah, basic. Well, not just the justice, but I just mean like all the way drugs have been handled, right? Like, and then people forget, like, I hear friends and sometimes colleagues, not just in policing, friends and stuff in life too. People get nervous when they hear the words like systemic racism and stuff like that, and like, oh, systemic racism. There's no such thing as systemic racism. How can a system be racist? And you're just like, dude, we're literally enforcing some laws that we know were invented to kick a bunch of Japanese and Chinese settlers out of our country when they were done building a railroad. Like, they're still on the books. Like, that was why they were created. Like, that was the first making opiates illegal, was to shut down the opium dens. Like, there are actual laws that were created out of racism that we're still trying to like hodgepodge together and make work for our society now that's more forward thinking, but we're still basing it off of like, some archaic principles and racist ideals.
So with knowing what you do about the justice system and about street culture and drug culture, have you ever been in a situation where you were inclined to like look the other way because you knew that perhaps arresting that person or whatever the case would bring more harm to that person than good?
All the time. No, and I strongly encourage it to my fellow police officers, man. Like, well, I'll tell you, one of the scariest things that I've started seeing, especially with like this whole like anti-police type of movement that's sort of, I think it started to die down now, hopefully, but it was pretty like, abolish the police and like a bunch of nonsense like that.
Defund the police, I remember that.
Yeah, defund the police and stuff, and obviously there's improvements that need to be made in policing, but I mean, getting rid of them completely is just asinine. And you live a pretty privileged little lifestyle if you don't think you need the police. But anyways, I digress, and it's completely forgot what the question is and where this started. What did you ask about again, Dan?
Just went down a rabbit hole, eh?
Yeah, that happens.
Look at Terry thought it was a good question.
Okay, must have been a good. Okay, you're on something about the justice system.
So here, okay, here you go.
Turning the other way.
Yes, there we go.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where I was going with that is one of the scariest things during that anti kind of police defund movement was removing discretion from police officers. you want police officers to have discretion. You want them to have discretionary power where they can make choices in every situation, no matter what. And that as long as they can articulate it properly of why they did something and whatever, that there's no like legal consequence to the cop, or there's no like violation of a police act or something like that. Like, cops need to have discretion, because not every situation is the same. They're all different. Where the reason, there might be a moment where, this person, for their own safety and well-being, needs to be arrested for the drugs in their pocket because we don't have anything else, and they need to, because they're a complete chaos to themselves, and everyone else around is just a safer place for them to be, and maybe they'll get help. And I have had lots of friends, like people that are my friends now, who went to jail for drug possession, usually selling. Mostly, you don't really go to jail for drug possessions, but but for selling. But they were also users, and came out saying like, that's what helped me turn my life around, And so there is definitely the benefit there, but I think that's a pretty rare case, unfortunately. And yeah, more often than not, I mean, you see someone with some small amount of drugs in their pocket, you stumble across it for whatever reason, let them keep it. Because if this is a desperate person that just spent their entire day, collecting cans or scraping together whatever they could to get that tiny little piece of joy that's in their pocket, that's all they have, you take it from them, they're just going to have to go and scrounge, break into your garage, break into your car, possibly, like, to get it again, and it goes around and around.
Donna's got a comment.
So I hope I'm not like moving the conversation too forward, but I'm just, based on what you're saying right now, I'm kind of curious what your feelings are on the new BC regulations on decriminalization and personal possession.
Oh man, good question, Donna.
Sorry, I didn't put Donna's questions on the sheet that I sent to you earlier today. So
and
I don't even think you've asked me I don't even think you've asked me a single question from that sheet, and I'm cool with it. Let's what's happening in BC? Well, there's a few interesting things there. Look, it's kind of like safe consumption. Drug decriminalization is kind of like safe consumption sites. It's the absolute bare minimum in harm reduction that you can do that would reduce the harm in one person's life in that exact specific moment that they were using. That's how I equate. And yet because it's the bare minimum, the results that we should expect, the positive benefits that we should expect, should also fit in that realm, understanding that this is like, we're not like reinventing some magical like new policy, a new system, putting it in place that's just going to have all this incredible societal impacts from it. Like, this is literally the bare minimum.
It's not harm elimination, it's harm reduction.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And this is like literally like the most like basic level you can do. And so, do I support drug decriminalization? Yeah, I mean, of course I do. Sadly, I think BC is, they're not going to see much benefit, because quite frankly, drugs have been decriminalized, in my opinion, simple possession, for a long time. Like, you haven't been going to jail for simple possession. Yeah, there are, like, you might still get your product seized by the cops, but no charge laid or something like that. And I suppose their new legislation stops that from being able to happen. But it's not going to create it's not going to have a massive impact. It's going to be kind of like when weed was legalized, everyone thought like hell was going to rain from the sky, and like nothing happened. So, like, nothing negative, I should say. And so I think that's what we're going to see there. It would be nice if they actually, instead of just doing, like, there was a team and a bunch of organizations in British Columbia that put forward an incredible plan for a rollout of drug decriminalization that would have actually had a lot more benefits, and that's not the plan that's taking place there. It kind of, once it goes through the government sort of system or whatever, whoever actually is rolling it out, I know that it's not the actual plan that those organizations put forward, unfortunately, because that would have had a lot more benefit, but probably also came with some cost because there was some harm reduction and forward-thinking initiatives included that maybe didn't want to get funded or something. I don't know.
So, do you think that the criminalization of substances, and perhaps maybe on a larger scale, like, I mean, you just mentioned it's sort of like a de facto law out there already where very small amounts don't get confiscated, but do you think that the ongoing criminalization of these substances is making work environments for service providers like yourself more dangerous?
Oh, without a doubt. And like myself, I mean, I'm a carpet cop. Like I sit in my desk and the files come to me, and then I go out and interview people and stuff. As far as I hit the scene or visit a crime scene that's already, you know, barricaded off and has all my friends in blue there. But our very, very front line, like the patrol people rolling around, yeah, it's way more dangerous. Paramedics, firefighters, service providers, you know, even, you know, harm reduction or prairie harm reduction. I had a file the other day where there was a shooting that happened right at the building site when they were closed, and I was able to grab their video surveillance and look through it, and it was like an accidental discharge, but somebody there had a little sawed-off gun in their backpack, and as they pulled it out, they accidentally shot someone in the leg with it. And so, like, you're seeing, you know, I've like, what happens when a drug supply becomes so cheap like it is now is suddenly everyone can afford to become a drug dealer. And so that's what we saw with meth and stuff. Like, we're talking like $5 points, which is like a tenth of a gram now. Whereas that used to be like 20 or 30 bucks back in the day.
It was
And
10
so
bucks. It was $10 back in my day
$10 for
a point. Yeah.
a point.
Yeah.
That's pretty cheap. That
Yeah.
wasn't that long ago though.
Yeah. Well, I knew people, you know how it is.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, even so, like, because
They
it
like
used to be
Dan's
like, it used to
copper.
be,
Yeah.
oh, Dan, you were a copper pipe guy,
I
weren't you?
was. Yeah.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
probably
I actually,
burning all kinds of rubber in your backyard.
I actually made the news one night. The cop plane caught me burning wiring harnesses out in the field, and like I made the newspaper. My mom clipped it out, and like I look at it once in a while, and you know, sort of reflect on that night. Like I looked up and I
Oh,
saw the
yeah.
plane. I'm like, I'm fucked.
I should
just
have
like
known.
you
I can't
probably-
believe I haven't put it two and two together. Of course you were a
Yeah.
copper wire guy, Dan.
Yeah,
Of course you were.
I was, yeah, through and through. She's over here losing her mind laughing. So, anyways, now that we've gone down that rabbit hole, where were we? I forget.
Um,
You also
criminalization.
forget.
Yeah.
We're talking about, I guess, like the a rollout of the BC.
Well, we were talking
guidelines,
about
and
that, but we were talking about
moved
making
away.
the. We were talking about the making the workplace
Oh,
more
that's
dangerous.
That's right. And so what happens with cheap drug supply is when everyone can become a drug dealer, like all of the same systems involved in dealing drugs, like all the business side, the gangs, the guns, the needing to protect your supply, needing to like take ownership over a client base, all of that stuff that used to only exist kind of higher up in the drug trade with the more like entrepreneurial type drug traffickers. Well, now that's down at the bottom with like as low as like the 14, 15-year-olds, like, you know, they're needing guns now. They're needing stuff to protect their little, you know, $40, $50, $100 investment into their little drug business. And so then that alone becomes more dangerous, and that increases massive amounts of violence in the community. People don't like that. That's not a narrative that I've heard really talked about anywhere. Like again, looking at like an economy, the price of the substance really does play a factor in the community impact.
So, where can we go from there? We've got a comment here. Des Towns, and I don't know what PHP means. Improper education at PHP treatment level for addicts and drug dealers who use treatments as an escape of jail sentences is no longer useful because the drugs aren't the same as and they're still being treated as it was the same back in the 70s and 80s. It is no longer working.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's could be accurate.
So when you touched a little bit on this already, but I want to sort of unpack it a little bit more, because I've had a few conversations about the rollout of the legalization of marijuana. Have you
Yeah.
seen it? Have you seen any sort of shift in the illicit marijuana economy since its legalization, like for better or for worse?
Well, I mean, let's think about this for a second, right? We've got a substance that its benefits are known to help people sleep and reduce pain.
Mm,
Cops are real shitty sleepers and have bad backs from the heavy belts they wear. So
mm.
I know that there's been some positive benefits in a lot of lives.
Yeah. Well, no, and that's not
When
necessarily what I mean. And I remember the last time I had you on the show, you just straight up admitted that you smoked, and that blew me away because I wasn't expecting you to say that at all. It kind of took me back. But that's not what
shouldn't.
I. No, well, it doesn't now because I know. But that's not really like. I mean, in the economy of it, like,
Oh, I see.
did the safer supply of marijuana displace the illicit supply?
Yeah, it did. Yeah. What did Yeah, it did. So the way that it kind of the way that I've watched it work, I was paying close attention to how this is going to happen, right? And there's a lot of people that will be might disagree with some of what I said here, and they might be right, and I could be wrong. Who knows? But just from my own experience and perspective, what I saw is the street price drop so dramatically that the profits would have just shrunk. Because again, I look at this like an economy, right? So like there was a time where for like premium kush back in the day it would be like 3,500 or 4 grand a pound for like premium BC kush or something that they'd be supplying to the street. You'd be lucky to sell a pound for $1,000, I think, now on the street. So you're still your input costs are still the same, right? If you're the entrepreneur and that's your business and you just had something where you were making 4 grand before and now you're making one, your input costs are the exact same. And so what ended up happening is there was a massive shift into online sales specific to edibles. And so I
Okay.
just for the harm reductionist in me, for your listeners that may consume cannabis products, make sure you're getting it from either yourself if you grow it or whatever, or a friend that's growing it, because you can do that as well. Obviously is the by far the best. But if you're going to be buying, make sure you're buying and supporting from an actual local store that has a government issued supply. And definitely when it comes down to edibles, because a lot of the edibles that are produced, like that are being mass produced by the same sort of or crime groups that were selling like the weed before, they're just spraying with like a THC distillate on the outside. It's not like it's actually like a gummy that's been made nice and it's got all the goodness cooked right into it. It's just like sprayed,
All the
you know.
goodness. So, and to add to that, like, have you seen any discernible reduction in the burden on the justice system since the legalization?
That would be tough to measure. I mean, there wouldn't be any. There'd be a lot fewer cannabis traffickers, I guess, going through the justice system. But even when I was in the drug unit back in the day, I said you could make this unit as big as you wanted, and the workload would never change because there's just so much supply. Like you could, like that. That's kind of the other side of this whole like. I mean, I can't even believe in 2023 we're even still having this argument that the war on drugs is the way to go, and that we're still even arresting. We haven't figured out a better way to do this because it is just we weren't even doing that right. Like you were only they could only afford to, like, trust me, I'm a tenacious cop. Like, I love policing. I don't care what unit and what my task is. I love it. It's a phenomenal job. I love every part of it. And so when I was in charge of a file, and I would always hit a ceiling. Always, every time. It was like, I know there's another bump I can do here. There's another level to go. There's this person that's laundering millions. No, we can't afford for you to go after them. So, I mean, even the war on drugs, there's a cost, right? Policing's expensive.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost as though the system is made to go after the low end.
Oh, 100%, dude. 100%. Which could imagine that. Like, imagine that right there. So you're actually selling more product. Like, if you're the entrepreneur that can never be touched at the top of this pyramid scheme, and not only are your customers using your product, but there's also these massively funded organizations that are coming through, taking your product and throw it in the garbage, and then your customer has to then go buy another one.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of, like, the Tabasco sauce.
Yeah.
There was this young entrepreneur years ago that approached the company. It's like a family-owned business that owns Tabasco. It starts with like Muck something. Can't remember what it's called, like a Scottish company or something. McKinley or McKinnon or something. And there's this young entrepreneur that went there one time and said, if I could double your profits, but I'm not going to tell you how, would you give me a portion of them? And they're like, double our profits. They're like, yep. So they signed like agreements and everything to make sure this happened. You know what he did?
What did he do?
Made the hole twice as big. It's a true story.
That's brilliant.
That is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Barb's chiming in here, and she's asking. Oh, hey Barb, by the way, good to see you. Barb says, so you can be too big to fail in the alternative market. To the alternative, I think that's like the illicit market. Is that accurate? Whatever. You press the button so that everyone can hear your cynicism.
I wouldn't get into any sort of debate with Barb over language.
Over semantics.
Well, Barb F, everyone knows who Barb F is. No, we're not touching Barb F. She's
she will melt your brain with philosophy.
Yeah. She'll start using some words that none of us understand.
Yeah. Barb is our very dear researcher and faculty member and university professor friend that is a dear friend of Hard Knocks Talks. So we
and of Matt Ingrouille.
Of course, we like to poke her in the ribs a little bit. So, oh man. So what are your thoughts on safe supply? You know, there's a lot of advocates out in the world that are pushing for an unfettered access. Like, you know, you should be able to go to the liquor store and get a gram of fentanyl along with your Mickey of vodka. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's crazy people on the side of every discussion, right? There's always
they're crazy. Is that what you just said?
There's extreme. I'll call them extremists. Sorry, let's call them extremists.
There we go.
There's extremists to every discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Oddly enough, I think there's been people over the years that have put me into that category, thinking that I'm out to lunch and stuff. Where it's I follow the research and see if it marries up with my experience that I'm seeing out there. And so, what do I believe in safe supply? 100%. We need a safe supply, because that, when you talk about the economy of the drug trade, because like I look at this from a community level. I'm looking at a change in drug policy from a policing lens, not from a let's go out there and hug, drug users lens. Although I'm completely also on the understanding that clearly most addiction is a symptom of trauma or mental health or something, a combination of the two. And so I get that aspect as well. But my focus and my area of expertise and what I care about is community safety. And so when you have this system that is, this organized crime system where we're giving literally millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to organized crime groups, that now we know a lot of that money too is going overseas, where they're creating literally billions of dollars a year off of the drug economy in Canada, and then that money is going overseas.
When you say we're giving this money, who's we? Who are you talking about?
Well, us, like society, like we all
our
are.
Communities.
Like the system that we've designed here is doing that. So when you're thinking, when I'm thinking safe supply, what I'm thinking is all that chaos that I'm used to seeing that drug user, I don't care what background that drug user comes from, why they're using. But if that drug user is having to get their substance and they're addicted to something that's illegal, they're having to interact with drug dealers, and they're not nice people to deal with. There's, I mean, some are, but the vast majority at the street level aren't, because they're also desperate and using themselves. They've got gangs that they got to deal with. They got all that shit. They've got the police, the cost associated to that. We've got the overdose crisis, the cost associated to that. We've got all this mass justice system, all this stuff that we've talked about. And we replace it with someone can just walk into their doctor's office. And that's what I look at it as. You know, we've had, if we want to talk about the medical model, I mean, they've had drug addiction in the DSMV now for quite a few number of years.
I believe it's 1958. I might be wrong, but I know it's around.
I thought
there
it was more recent. You might be right. I thought it was more recent, but maybe not. And so you look at like the way that our community currently deals with every other mental health issue, whether you're bipolar, schizophrenic, you're having an episode, you're not, but you're struggling, you're suicidal. The way that we deal with it in our current health structure is we medicate with medication. We medicate that person to try to stabilize them. And we use the term stabilize them in the community, because we closed down all of our mental health facilities where we used to just lock people up, and decided, no, community treatment's the way to go. So, okay, we're going to treat them in the community with medication. And then maybe there'll be some outpatient reach. They'll have some services and access, blah, blah, blah. That's how we treat every mental health illness, except for when it comes to drugs or an addiction. So, like, why? Like, you know, with the framework the framework's there. Not only is a framework there, but CRISM, the Canadian Research Initiative of Substance Misuse, I think it was in 2017, 2018, they created an actual prescription framework so that doctors could legally, and they can legally now, prescribe injectable drugs to a user, and it's totally fine. But the problem is the shifting from the justice to health. Mm-hmm. And when our medical field isn't prepared to accept you know, that new set of clientele, if you want to call it that, or accept those people over to their system, and they've actually built a framework and they're prepared to use this framework to help those people, then that's where we're at right now, where it's like people are getting angry that the police are still dealing with it. Then you have people saying, well, we want it to move to health, but then you have right now in medical school, the only time that a doctor learns about addiction medicine in their entire degree program, and even in their doctorate, is as an elective in one class if they choose. So it's so far from, we're so far from even like teaching our medical professionals about addiction medicine and how to prescribe this, so that we can take all of those millions of dollars of profit that we're giving to, you know, organized crime groups, and use it to fund our healthcare system.
So what do you think is at the very root of all of this ignorance, both in the justice system and in the medical system? Why is it so hard to make that switch?
Public systems, man. Public systems are archaic. They're slow to change. They're, you know, you look at if you were to just compare, we have a private system and we have a public system. The private system, they are looking at solving our energy crisis with nuclear fusion by 2028. It's looking like that's going to be tapping into the grid. We've got artificial intelligence launching out at a speed that's just blown everybody's mind at the capabilities. We're going to be completely redesigning.
AI blew my mind a couple, like last week. I found Chat GPT.
Oh, dude, I've been on Chat GPT since it launched every day. It is
scary.
I love it. Oh,
it's great. Like, you can have a conversation. Well, okay,
excellent.
It's scary for how smart it is, I think. Like, it doesn't say scary things to me, but
yeah.
know?
I mean, it can be used for evil, but more people will use it for good, and it will balance out like every technology does. But, you know, you look at those incredible advancements that have happened on that on our private side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then you walk over here and it's just like, okay, blow the dust off of the dinosaur system over here, and there's no innovation. Innovation's not encouraged.
Mm-hmm.
Risk takers are not encouraged. Doing things differently is not encouraged.
But why? Like we know sort of these things aren't encouraged, but let's
there's no
dig deeper
incentive.
than that.
Okay, well, I'll tell you why I think it is. You've got on the private side, doesn't matter what your business is, you're making or selling widgets. I don't care. It's
What's
a widget.
What's a widget?
Well, it's just a thing. It's just like a thing of you're making widgets or you're selling widgets on the private side, right? Doesn't matter what business you're in. That's how you generate money. You're buying and selling stuff. You're making something, you're selling it, right? And so if there's a human being tied to the success of this, of like your company is tied to an individual, right? Maybe the CEO of the company, for example. Okay, the CEO, if we made 100 widgets this year, we need to make 101 widgets next year, or else I'm out of a job or I'm not going to get my bonus. So then all of a sudden this young, tenacious employee comes up the ranks and she's figured out how to make widgets like double what everyone else is making. Oh, we need that person into management immediately because we want them to train everyone else how to make widgets twice as fast, and our company grows and everyone's profitable, everyone's celebrating the innovation. That doesn't happen. There's no widgets over on the public side. There should be. The public should be holding it accountable, but it's not cash, and it's not people's livelihood tied to it. It's not my investment in my retirement fund tied to it. It's my physical health. It's my community safety. We should hold it to the same standard, and it should move as fast, but just by design, it just can't.
I worked for one, sorry to cut you off, Dan, and to just like jump in here, but sometimes that's necessary.
It's true. It's true.
I worked for one community organization, or not community organization, sorry, it was government, and I won't mention which organization, but, you know, it was a common sentiment among the staff that, what the fuck do I care? They're not going to fire me. I'd pretty much have to shoot somebody in the face to get fired. And the work environment was so toxic and nobody gave a shit. And I got to tell you, this was part of the judicial system. Again, that's as far as I'm going to identify, though.
So it's
not just there. It's not just justice. Like I've got friends in every system, in every public system, and when we get together, you think it's unique to your own workplace. You think you're just like, oh, this is so frustrating that we can't get this done, and we're fighting against this wall just to be able to do my job. And it's not. It's happening in health. It's happening in education. It's happening in academia. It's happening in justice. It's the public. Our public institutions are not incentivized to innovate. And then what really blew my mind is when I hopped on board with when initially Prairie Harm Reduction was AIDS Saskatoon. We had Jason McCurdy in there with Kayla, who's our current executive director, but she was a director at the time. And I saw these young, innovative people that had this peanut budget, and they were moving mountains with it. And I'm like, oh, okay, there's government funding going into these organizations, but why is this able to move? Why were we able to open, a safe consumption site in a city that is, pretty right leaning and sort of scared of, some of this stuff? How were we able to kind of do that in such a quick period of time and get public on board and kind of launch these initiatives? Well, it's because our funding depends on this success. Our donations are encouraging us to act. So there is a financial aspect. You've got a board of directors that is being like, hey, this is what we want our executive directors doing. Get out there and let's do it. And so you just see this huge innovation coming out of all of these amazing, tiny community-based organizations. So, I mean, if anyone is looking at where to send their money to, find a community organization that is doing something that you care about and give your money to them. It stays in Saskatoon. It stays in your community. There's so many. You get Choke Cherry Studios, the amazing work that those young people are doing with their organization. I mean, that was a bunch of teenagers that started that, and now it's an incredible support system to so many youth in our core neighborhoods.
and these organizations, they're much more nimble, right? Like they don't got the
So
giant,
nimble.
they don't have the giant machine on their back. But where do you think stigma plays into this resistance? Like, of course, this machine that we call a system is giant and slow moving, and nobody gives a shit. But at the root of it, somewhere there's someone that can make a decision to bring change. Why aren't they doing that?
Because the system is designed so that those people that would do that can't make it there, or get burnt out trying, and they quit and they leave.
Hmm.
It's just the reality. And I mean, that's I mean, if there are senior managers of an organization listening to what I just said there and taking offense to it, then you're that person. Everyone else in your organization is talking about it. Everyone else is saying like why is somebody who did nothing for their entire career able to move so much faster than people that have been putting their blood, sweat, and tears into places, especially up to the senior ranks, at least when it comes to policing. I'm not slagging on my service by any means. We have phenomenal managers at the very top, actually. But it is evolving, and more of them are getting in there, getting up there in these organizations. But it's not an organization. None of our public institutions are really rewarding that widget maker, the person who's doubling up on the widgets. In fact, that makes them nervous, because what usually happens is the person on the public side that's making the widget, so in my case, maybe solving crime, or maybe like in the drug unit, getting the most drugs off the street, getting the most guns off the street. If you're in health, maybe, if you're a nurse and you're the way that you deal with your patients is like next level. You're forming these incredible relationships and helping them deal with the medical trauma that they're going through. If you're a teacher that's doing those extra things, coaching, and really becoming, a role model, and someone that these children can aspire to be like and look up to. Those individuals are not then plucked and said from the organization, said, whoa, you're the ones that we need over here, like it is on the private side. Instead, it's like, whoa,
this person has more seniority than you, so sorry, keep trying.
I mean that sometimes plays a factor, but I think it's more of just it's people that try more could on a very surface appearance level could look scary, like they're risk takers, or like they're trying to push the status quo too much or something like that, instead of embracing what that could be, and like embracing these people within your organization and be like, we need to encourage this type of behavior. We need to support these people at driving more. And that is happening. I'm not saying it's not happening. I mean, I've watched an incredible evolution happen. So I'm not saying it's not happening, but you can't say that we have the nuclear fusion and artificial intelligence version of our public systems. We just don't.
So let's take we've looked outward from a service provider's perspective, outward into the community. Let's have a look inward into the system. So what have you ever seen colleagues fall victim to the system they serve as a result of their own substance use challenges?
As a result of their own substance use challenges?
Yeah.
There's sort of that there's sort of that old, I don't know if it's like movie sort of detective, that grizzly old cop there that's just working his ass off, and he's got the bottle in his desk that he's pounding back at the end of shift. I can understand where that caricature comes from, especially for people that are really giving it, whatever area that you work in. If you are really giving it your all, and then you've got all this internal or ethical dilemmas that are happening at the same time, I can definitely see where somebody that didn't have a healthy support system or outlets could fall victim of substance use, or misuse, just like anyone could. I haven't personally seen like a friend like, become an alcoholic or start using drugs to a level that's like dangerous, or like, I haven't seen that personally specific to substance use, but I've seen like really good cops leave and quit, and people that I would like to work, wish they were still around, that just couldn't do it anymore, or retired early. A lot of people retire early, the good people, because they've done it and they're tired. And I get it. I'll probably be one.
Is it because the work is hard, or is it because of the frustration that they are not allowed to do it better?
It's both, right? It's that story of Chantel that I told at the start, right? It's seeing that every day over and over and over again. It's any first responder is dealing with trauma. Like, I mean, you're taking on other people's trauma, whether you're a social worker, and you're having to displace a family, whether you are a counselor and you're trying to help people process their trauma. You're still listening. You're still taking that in yourself, and being traumatized to a certain extent yourself. And so, yeah, that there's the nature of the job too, but the most frustrating things, honestly, it's the systemic flaws when you start recognizing them, because then you're just like, oh man, like this could be so much better if just, A, B, or C could happen. And then you around the coffee table, everyone is saying that. And it's like, well, if we're all saying that, like, why can't it happen? And then that's where I started analyzing, like, why can't it happen? And then you start seeing, well, kind of the design and the way that we're not manufacturing widgets. It's a very, very, public systems are very, very slow by design to change. And it's not because anyone's like evil and being like, oh, we don't want this to get better. It's just the design of it is just not exactly innovative.
Yeah. So we've identified a plethora of problems this evening. We're coming to the end. In fact, we're over time, but we're going to roll with it. What can we do? You said you've dug into it. You've done some investigating. You are an advocate ferociously to the very core of who you are, as far as I can tell. What can we do as a community to help move some solutions forward, move some solutions into the public eye, where the voters are, where we can maybe sway public opinion enough to win a couple votes, other than doing Hard Knocks talks, because it's amazing.
Definitely do Hard Knocks talks any chance you can get. There's no doubt about that. Listen to it every day and all day. What can you do? You can support community-based organizations. That's a huge one. Volunteer in your community. Like, it really.
We wouldn't. I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to interrupt you right there. Hard Knocks Talks would not be what it is without the support of the community-based organizations in this community.
No, that's awesome.
End of story.
Yeah.
That is it. If I was turning to the government for funding to do what I do, to do what we do on this level, we would not be doing it anymore.
No. Well, and nor I don't know if the government would be an arm to fund you, but private sponsors for sure, maybe. I could see in the future, right? Get your followers up and stuff. But yeah, so what can we do? Like, supporting community, like, communities are built through contribution. Our systems change through contribution. So if you can donate time. If you can donate cash, donate cash. If you can, if you're passionate about something, talk about that passion. Encourage, if you're a manager within an organization and you see a unicorn in there, embrace that person and help mold them. If I, like, now that I've got 17 years in, it seems crazy to say, because it feels like I just got there yesterday in policing. When I look around and I see, or I read a file, or I get a file and I just saw that there was some young, fairly new patrol cop that just went above and beyond in a witness statement or whatever, I find that person, I send them an email, I see them in the halls, and like, that was such a great job you did. And we just really compliment their skill set and just really empower the people below you. I try not to complain down, and within an organization, I got this lesson from, Paul Pitzel is never going to listen to this, but kind of a mentor of mine at work to an extent was my sergeant for a while, and I was fortunate enough to work with him. A man of wisdom who's been around for a long time, and he said, you you complain up, you don't complain down. It's our job as senior employees in an organization to protect the bottom from the top and just encourage that bottom, let them grow. We'll bear the brunt of the bitterness and try to push this change, you know, if we're passionate about it, up. But let's really embrace and not try to spread that toxic narrative down.
Well, my son's coming into the studio. That must mean it's time to shut it down. He knows what time it is. So, okay, Matt, for anybody who's watching this live, stick around after the closer. We're going to spin the wheel and give some stuff away. If you're listening to the recordings, then you should come and listen to the live sometimes. And Matt, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for bringing your expertise to the community and sharing some stories with us. And we'll let you go, my friend. Take care.
Thanks for having me. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening.
All right, if you like if you're getting something out of what we're doing here, you can find us on all audio platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts, or live and interactive, right here on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch TV. Thanks for watching. Take care, everyone. Good night.
Say, this is Hard Knocks Talks.